Welcome to the DNA Show. I'm David,
I'm Amanda.
and we have a special guest here with us today, Dr. Shiva. He's here to discuss his running this year and his how he came to Massachusetts. So welcome, Dr. Shiva. How are you today?
Thank you, David. Thank you, Amanda, for having me on and taking time out of your day to do this.
No problem.
Well, let me begin
So
by just...
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'll just give, I think the key points are, I've been in Massachusetts for 45 years. I came here when I was 16 or 17 years old to go to a school called MIT, which I didn't know anything about until 2 weeks before I applied. That's an interesting story. But I grew up originally in Jersey from the age of 7 to 17 for about 10 years. New Jersey is interesting because it's very, very diverse in terms of people and economic backgrounds. My parents first came here from India. I grew up in a town called Paterson, New Jersey, predominantly African American. And this was at the time, David and Amanda, when the Vietnam War was going on. So for me, being transported from India, coming to the United States was like a very, very different world. But in some ways, it was very similar. Paterson was very similar in some ways to the variety of Bombay. I don't know how old you guys are, but you remember this was the era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. People with bell-bottom jeans. You turn on the TV and you'd see, all the stuff going on in Vietnam, body bags coming home. It was a pretty dramatic time period. Great music.
Wow. Slightly before us, but...
Yeah, so it's 1970. And then after a year, my parents moved to the next. My parents kept moving to different towns to get better public school education. So they moved from this predominantly all African American town to a mixed town called Clifton, and then to a place called Lake Hiawatha. And eventually, the last 3 years, I went to Livingston High School. In fact, where the Kushners grew up. Jared Kushner's father was there. So it's a very wealthy neighborhood. I felt very out of place, but it had just phenomenal teachers, a lot of working class teachers who would teach. They were very dedicated. My chemistry teacher had 3 jobs. He was a contractor, a carpenter, and a chemistry teacher. He ended up winning the presidential award for the best chemistry teacher in the country.
Nice.
One of his students ended up, Stephen Chenvik, won the Nobel Prize in chemistry and ended up becoming, I think, the head of the Department of Energy. People like Harlan Coben went there, or Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, or Chris Christie was our catcher. I played baseball. As I shared earlier, I grew up mowing lawns. I was a all-American kid in many ways, but I also was pretty good at math and science. By the time I was 13, 14, I'd finished all the math classes at Livingston, and they didn't have anything else to offer me. So I got very, very lucky. I got accepted to a special program at New York University as a 14-year-old kid to do computer science. And there were 40 kids accepted into that program. This is when computers were just coming, Dave and Amanda. In those days, a computer wasn't...
Yeah, they were big. They were at a...
Yeah, it wasn't this size. It was the size of your room, my room, and, about, 5,000 square feet, these massive computers. So I started going to NYU in Newark, where you take the train. My mom would drop me off. Most parents are afraid to send their kids anywhere these days on their own. And I graduated top of the class. And then I didn't really have much to do in terms of science or math because I'd finished everything. I ended up getting a job very fortuitously in the heart of Newark, New Jersey, at a small medical college called the University of Medicine and Dentistry, which was part of Rutgers Medical School. And it was there I created the first email system when I was 14. Some people may remember the inbox.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, seeing that I'm in IT, this whole email thing, that kind of intrigued me.
Yeah, so the reality is, if you go back, how old are you, David and Man? How old are you guys, if I may ask?
I'm 44.
41.
Okay. So anyone over the age of 50, you guys are sort of right about there, will remember the way that many organizations communicated at that time was through 2 ways. Like if you had a big organization like a medical school or the White House or the office of the president or prime minister, they communicated. They had a physical landline phone, which was copper line. faxes were just coming. And the other was the inter-office mail system. It was a paper-based mail system. And every office in this medical college, or if you went to even the White House, every office had a secretary, always a woman in those days, who had a typewriter on her desktop. And there was a trash can under her desktop. And she had folders, big, huge steel metal folders. And then on her desktop, she had a big box, and it was labeled inbox. Another box was labeled outbox. Another box was labeled drafts. And then she also had paper clips. She had white paper, which was called bond paper, that you would put in the typewriter. And then she had these little pieces of black paper, which we'll call carbon paper. Now, and then in many of these offices, they had these big pneumatic tubes that would run around. So and then it connected one office to another. And so the way offices communicated in this business environment was through this paper-based, and it was called the inter-office mail system. It was a keyword is system. Okay, it wasn't like you had a carrier pigeon just carry, a message from point A to point B. So typically the way the system worked is the boss, in this case it was a doctor, would go over to his secretary. Let's say her name was Doris, and he'd say, Doris, and he'd dictate to her. Okay, to Dr. Smith, please note that we're hiring a new person. I'd like you to review his resume. Tell me if he would make a good surgeon in our environment or a good researcher. And then he would attach the person's resume with a paper clip, right? And then he would CC, carbon copy, maybe the human resources department, blind carbon copy, maybe his boss. So what happened when he did this? Well, the secretary had a very structure. In those days, she would take the paper at the top of it, she would type in memorandum. 2, it could go to a person or sometimes to a whole department from in this case, Dr. XYZ's name, subject, date, and then she'd type away. But if it was a CC, she would have to put the paper, piece of carbon paper, another piece of paper. Okay?
Yeah.
And she'd type. If she had to do a BCC and 3CC, she'd have to type multiple times. Xerox machines still hadn't come, into being. So it's quite a job. And then she'd write the draft of the letter, put it in the drafts. The doctor would come back, take a red pen, mark it all up, to tell Doris what was wrong or right. She would rewrite another one. They may go through this a couple of times. Yeah. And then eventually they had the final letter. She'd do the CC, the BCC, and they had a big manila envelope. I have some pictures if you want to see it, but nonetheless, it was put into that manila envelope and put through these pneumatic tubes, which would send
which those are like the same ones that banks still use today for.
Yes. But you understand this was a system. And the CCs and the attachments were separately treated. And you could also do registered mail. She may want to send a mail and make sure she got an acknowledgement, in which case this guy with a little hat would come back with a little pink slip saying it was received. It was a complex system. It was a system of systems. So if you look at it, if people go to the Inventor of Email site, you'll see all of this is in the Smithsonian, by the way. I documented all the features. So at the time, Dave, I wasn't hired to do this. I was hired to actually do research as a research assistant, working with people 30, 40 years older than me. But I worked there full time while going to high school. And I was initially doing research on why babies were dying in their sleep.
Wow, that's incredible.
Applying computers to look at sleep patterns and seeing if I could look at those sleep patterns, see a certain pattern that would cause a baby to choke, or, stop breathing. Yeah. So I wrote some of the earliest algorithms for this before I came to MIT in a small medical college in Newark, New Jersey. And in fact, they were published. In fact, I went to present one in Finland. But the key thing is, man, I was treated like an equal. It wasn't no hierarchy, meaning as long it was true meritocracy, meaning they saw me as someone who was, would work hard, pretty smart, right? And was devoted. And I had my briefcase I'd bring in. I had my own little desk, and I'd work with, a guy called Phil Goldstein, who was a nuclear physicist. Dr. Michelson was a particle physicist. He'd gone to Brookhaven. Really, really sharp people. So I was in this great environment in retrospect. And so I was doing that research. They saw I could program, and they said, hey, you want to convert this old-fashioned system to the electronic version. So I designed it, wrote all the code in Fortran, which was not designed for text processing, in 8 kilobytes of RAM. So I had to write the memory manager, the virtual memory, all this stuff that we all take for granted.
Yep.
And I wrote 50,000 lines of code to capture about 100 different features. Now remember this, you have to remember that if you can transport yourself back then, who used computers were old white guys in lab suits with little pocket protectors. And they would have to write these very complex commands. The thought of a woman using a computer, there was obviously a lot of sexism, right? Women were relegated in those days to be a nurse, a housewife, right? Or a teacher, or a secretary.
Yep.
And the secretaries were used to using these big typewriters, right? And the thought of them using a computer was unheard of. In fact, I came to find out many years later, in December of 1977, the quote-unquote ARPANET guys, who faked that they invented email, they didn't. Big lie, one of the biggest lies in history. They said it was impossible to do something like this, to take the interoffice mail system and make it the electronic version, because you'd have to build the user interface, right? Those guys, at best, were sending simple messages, like telegraph, okay, from point A to point B, which was actually done back in the 1930s. But nonetheless, I was asked to convert this entire system to the electronic version. I worked day and night until 2 a.m. in the morning. I named this system email. It was not an obvious term. Oh, it's electronic mail. No, it wasn't obvious. The only reason I named it email was the operating system, the HPRT4 operating system, only allowed 5 characters, E-M-A-I-L. Okay?
Oh, okay.
And I remember looking at the word, I said, is that email? It was a weird, it may seem intuitive, but it wasn't. Named it email, wrote all the code to capture every feature: inbox, outbox, composed memo, registered mail, broadcast, what you would call today email marketing. Every feature.
So when you designed this, did you design it just for like an office setting, or did you anticipate it going worldwide?
Well, you have to understand, at that time, you had wide area networks. And by the way, you don't need email. You don't need the internet for email. This is many of the early email systems were all on LANs and wide area networks. Okay. Mm-hmm. What I did know, there's an article that I wrote then, which was for the Westinghouse. I said email will be as important as a light bulb. I wrote that as a 16-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid. It's quite, I read this stuff, and the prescience was quite incredible, because when you're actually doing something, you can see the future. It's almost patent to you, right? But so I knew what I was doing was important, but we weren't like Apple, being confidential. Hewlett Packard came in because their computers were the ones that were donated to the lab that we would use. Seeing what we're doing, IBM came in. I ran the first seminar. There's a very interesting letter. Dr. Michelson was my supervisor. He goes, one day we led this huge seminar, but this seminar was not done by a gray-haired medical scientist. This was done by a 14-year-old kid. About 200 people showed up. I wrote the manual. I was a QA person, everything. It was not just a simple toy. It was a full-blown email system, the first of its kind ever. There was a thing called the Westinghouse Science Awards, which later became the Intel Awards, which was called the Baby Nobles of today, and I won one of those. Was in the local newspaper, and so. But to me, this was just exciting. I never thought about it like inventing something, starting a company. If I was in Silicon Valley now, that was the first thing, right? You would think about.
Right.
You would think about trademarking it, etc. But I went to MIT. I got accepted. And when I landed at MIT, September, you can find it all online. On the front page of MIT in orientation, they listed 3 out of the 1,000 students who had done something they thought were, 1,041 kids got accepted at MIT that year, out of probably 100, 200,000 who applied. And out of the 1,041, I was highlighted as 3 of the 1,000 who had created this thing. I had created email. I was invited to the president of MIT's house, was Paul Gray at the time, who was also on Reagan's White House Science Council. And he was very, very upset that the courts did not know what software was. There was no laws really protecting software. That's how new this was,
Right.
Dave, Amanda. So if you made, a machine, you could patent it. But what could you patent software? The Federal Court of Appeals had not accepted, or the Supreme Court did not recognize software patents. However, in 1980, I arrived in 1981, a law was passing that you could use copyright law. It was called the Computer Act of 1980 to protect software inventions. So Dr. Gray told me about this. I wrote away for the document. There was no PDFs or any of that. You didn't go on the internet. A few days later, I had to fill it all out. My parents did not have money to hire lawyers like Bill Gates' parents, right? Filled it out. On August 30th, 1982, I was issued the first copyright recognizing me as the inventor of email, period. Wrote the code, named it Email Habit. Now, I was not into PR promoting this. I was really interested in medicine. That's why I was working at that medical school. So went in and out of MIT. And I came to MIT to actually do medicine, eventually be a doctor. But I was really upset at the way that Western medicine looked at the body. They didn't see it as a system.
Yep.
They saw it as a bunch of parts. You went to a doctor, with a headache. You may then be sent to a neurologist or a psychiatrist, all these people. And I didn't really like that. So I ended up doing engineering because engineering always considered things as systems. So I went in and out of MIT, did, as I mentioned, 4 degrees, my PhD in a field called biological engineering, created another technology called Cytosolve, which can eliminate the need for animal testing. But it was only in 2011 when my mom was dying of this horrible disease. She was living in Massachusetts too. Yep. And she had 3 months to live. And in a suitcase, she had preserved all these documents, which she gave to me in an old Samsonite suitcase. The editor of Time magazine was first, the science editor, a technology editor, sorry, reviewed it, and he wrote an article. You can find it. It was a front page article on the online site. It goes, A Man Who Invented Email, Shiva Interview, right? And it went through the whole thing, what is email, etc. After that, the Smithsonian contacted me and wanted all my materials. So they did an honoring ceremony, went into the Smithsonian. And what I didn't know was during those 33 years that I wasn't out there promoting myself, a company that we all know in Massachusetts called Raytheon, which is a big missile defense company, had rebranded themselves as the inventors of email. Why? Because Raytheon, used to make all their money from missile sales. But in 2007, 8, 9, they saw cybersecurity. Remember spying on people post 9/11 as a big opportunity. So they had moved their entire base to cybersecurity, right? And they said, oh, we're the inventors of email. If you went to their website, you see the big @ symbol. They had this nerd-looking guy with a beard who did not invent email, Ray Tomlinson, rebranded him and hyped up the ARPANET guys, who, by the way, try to get credit for inventing everything when they didn't do, frankly, very little. Okay.
Wow. That's terrible.
It's complete branding. So when my stuff went to the Smithsonian, David and Amanda, it was like a skull was found in Africa, redefining where humans came from. So instead of being celebrated as a 14-year-old kid, an immigrant who represents the American dream, it set off a tidal wave of vitriol. Who is this guy? How dare he say this? And if you look at that period, my Wikipedia page was locked. My Wikipedia page was completely changed. All my awards were completely taken away. It was like a public lynching. How dare this guy say he's the inventor of email? And when you really look at the story, it's not, the facts are black and white. Anyone who looks at them, I have all the records, I have the code. Ray Tomlinson admitted he didn't invent email. He said it was just a 15-minute change he did to something to attach text to a bottom of a remote file. That's like the early version of Reddit or Facebook. It's not email. You never called it email. It didn't have inbox, outbox, folders, everything we see, right? It's just exchanging text message from one remote computer to another, okay? The simple exchange of text messages is not email. And I never claimed to be the inventor of electronic messaging. That goes to Samuel Morse. But these guys, and there's a great essay written at the time by a guy called Michael Podlipsky talking about how Raytheon and ARPANET would try to always hype up what they were doing to get credit for shit they didn't even do, because that's where you get government funding. You see, so that's where a lot of this comes from. But I invented email, period. The facts are black and white. You have all this vitriol. A magazine called Gawker Media called me an asshole, a dick, a fraud. It was quite abusive. And when you would go tell, and I never wanted credit for the invention of email. But after that, I said, wait a minute. I did fucking invent email. And I have to defend that 14-year-old kid and the origins of where email came from. So eventually, 4 years later, I was able to get a great lawyer called Charles Harder. And we sued. He did it on contingency. He saw the data. We sued for $35 million. We drove Gawker into bankruptcy, which had written these 3 defamatory articles. They paid me about $1 million, and they were forced to remove those 3 articles. Wikipedia never even wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And Wikipedia locked my page. Now, why is this so abusive? And why is such the manipulation of fake controversy? Is for this simple reason. It's for multiple reasons. A, it was done in Newark, New Jersey. Nothing is supposed to come out of Newark. It was done outside the bastions of MIT, Stanford, and Yale, right? All great innovations are supposed to come out of Silicon Valley. Or Harvard, right? Or MIT if you're a dropout. This was done before I came there, you see? And it was a 14-year-old kid. And a dark-skinned kid. So you have the racism issue, the working class issue, and the fact that it was done, a great innovation, isn't it supposed to be done by Harvard dropouts? That could be cool, right? You could create Facebook after you went to Harvard. You could create, and by the way, Bill Gates didn't create DOS. He stole it from someone else and took credit for it.
He did.
Yeah.
I knew that.
This was done by a 14-year-old kid in an environment of not of the military-industrial academic complex, but an environment of cooperation, collaboration, and a loving family. You see, that's a triangle. In fact, in the midst of this, a guy called Walter Isaacson, who was the head of the Wall Street Journal, head of Time Magazine, not head of Time Magazine, head of the Aspen Institute, Isaacson writes all the big biographies, right? Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. In the middle of the controversy, they throw him in to write a new origin of the internet. It was called the Innovators of the Digital Revolution. So the controversy started in 2012. I sued in 2016 when I won. In 2014, Isaacson is commissioned to write a book, one of the biggest technology writers. The name of the book is The Innovators of the Digital Revolution. All white people, nothing against white people, okay? And email is left out of it. How could you leave out the invention of email out of the digital revolution?
Right. I know.
Quite extraordinary. Right. So this was basically the fact. And furthermore, I was not a good Indian. I mean, I fight. If you look at my history, I've always built bottoms-up movements. I'm a fighter. So the thought of a dark-skinned Indian guy fighting back and demanding his place in history, you're not supposed to do that too. Very good friend of mine said this. He goes, what they really are annoyed by is the fact that you're actually not being a Gandhi, talking like this and saying, okay, fine, you can screw with me. I was actually willing to fight back. So, but the facts are so obvious.
Yep.
I have the code. I named it email. I have the fucking copyright. Ray Tomlinson wrote 15 minutes of code. Why is this guy hyped up? Because the branding goes to Raytheon. The branding goes to MIT. The branding goes to the military industrial
complex. It's the bigger companies that always get the recognition.
Well, it's no, or David, it's more important. It's to say that, you can be, now remember, I was on the front page of MIT for inventing many other things. Fulbright, you'll see front page articles on me, right? Front page in Technology Review. But in 2012, when I'm saying that I invented email before I came to MIT, that's a problem because it hurts MIT's brand. Okay. Because the branding is a working class person must get anointed by them, and then you're recognized. You see? You cannot on your own merit. So
I just wanted to say, so what made you go from technology into being a doctor?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a systems biologist. I've always been interested in medicine. It's a great question. When I was born in India, my grandmother was a traditional healer, right? There's an ancient system of Indian medicine that goes back 5,000, 10,000 years. And I saw, most of the village, 87% of India is still villages. In a village, doctors who go to medical school don't come back to villages. So who does the healthcare? It's women typically. It's typically a woman who's a local healer. She's learned the traditional systems of medicine. So if you have an issue, you go to her. She looks at your face. She analyzes it. It's called Samudrika Lakshanam. It's a whole ancient technique. And now Media Lab has created some diagnostic techniques where you can look at your face and predict different diseases. And then they would look at you and they would give you personalized medicine. If two people had the same issue, one person may get a different mixture of herbs, another person may get a different mixture of herbs because people's constitutions are different. Today we call it precision or personalized medicine, the right medicine for the right person at the right time. So I saw this woman with no degrees heal people, and I was fascinated by medicine. How was she able to do this? This was when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. In addition to that, I grew up in a caste system in India where we were considered the lower caste, the darker skinned Indians. You see? India has this caste system. Many of the Indians who come here are the light skinned Brahmins, okay? Like this guy Vivek Ramaswamy, a complete douchebag. All right? We can have a whole discussion. But so I remember being abused as a lower caste member in India. So I was fascinated by politics since I've been 4 years old and fascinated by medicine. Two very different areas. So to answer your question, I've always been interested in medicine and politics, all the time. I read probably everything you could think about of political leaders, revolutionary leaders, and was deeply interested in medicine. So when I came to MIT, I wanted to do medicine, right? When I was working at that, it was a medical college where email was invented.
Yep.
It was not by the military. So it was always medicine that I was interested in, Dave. But then I would get pulled into
and that brought
building
you into other avenues.
Email, right? And then I created an AI company for analyzing email in 1993 after winning a contest for the White House when Bill Clinton was there. So the trajectory was always medicine, but then I would get pulled into these other things, go start companies, and I made a fortune with this one company in the late 90s, early 2000 to analyze and route email. We created a bunch of jobs for people in Massachusetts, right? Thousands of jobs. And we became the premier company. All started bottoms up, no VC funding. So, but it was in 2003 that I looped back to medicine. I was running a company in Cambridge called Echo Mail. And I was walking back to MIT and a professor of mine said, hey, you should come back and finish your PhD. There's a new field coming called systems biology, where you view the body as a system. And they were creating an engineering department, Dave and Amanda, to look at biological systems, which was quite pioneering. So I came back, did my PhD. I was one of the first graduates out of that department. And for my PhD, I created a technology. Email was the electronic version of these complex interoffice mail system. I created a technology called Cytosolve, which was a electronic version of the molecular systems of the human body, of the human cell. And the idea was
when you started basically getting into technology, writing this, did you teach yourself how to write code, or is that just something you studied?
Yeah, well, you have to understand. So in 1977, when I got accepted, 78, into that program at NYU, they taught me 7 programming languages in an intensive. Right? So we learned some of these languages people don't know: COBOL, Snowball, PL1, Fortran. And so I learned.
I've done in COBOL and Fortran. When I worked in a stockroom at Western Mass Electric and here, and so their servers were still running COBOL. So.
Right. Many of these institutions use COBOL. So I learned, and I realized all these languages are similar. In fact, when I came to MIT, I initially registered in the computer science program. And I was so bored because it's like being a mechanic. You guys imagine doing landscape and you actually learn it hands-on. and then you go to a landscape architecture course. You get bored out of your mind because you already know what you're doing.
Right,
so I ended up switching to double E, But anyways, 2003, I went back to MIT, spent 4 years, and I created a new technology platform like email, like Echo Mail, which could mathematically model the human cell and eliminate the need for animal testing. So that was pretty radical.
That's good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Being a pet care person.
Yeah. I have 2 dogs. I've always had dogs. And there's no need for animal testing, by the way,
No.
at all. Even the FDA now recognizes, because the animal body is very different than a human body. In fact, human bodies actually vary. Most of the drug testing, they go to Africa and they test on Africans, and they're giving drugs to Caucasians in the US, right? So the whole thing, the drug development model, by the way, takes 13 years, $5 billion to create one drug which has side effects. And it's failing. And everyone knows it's been failing. This is why they needed to move to a new platform, which was the mRNA platform. So pharma's sales were actually dropping. If you look at Pfizer's sales, they were dropping, and they were going to. Pfizer sales went from 60 billion down to 40 billion. And if it wasn't for the mRNA vaccine, they'd be dead. So the mRNA vaccine boosted their revenue from 40 billion to 80 billion, literally in 1 year. So they know that the old pharmaceutical model of developing drugs is not working. The future is what I'm doing with Cytosolve, where we have a completely different way of developing and identifying medicines, which is looking at natural compounds. There's about 500,000 compounds in nature, curcumin from turmeric, berberine from the, different trees. If you could combine those combinations, you could probably solve every disease. But the number of combinations are more than the number of atoms in the universe. So how would you do that? Pharma doesn't want to deal with that problem, so they create synthetic drugs. The woo-woo people in the natural medicine world are throwing stuff together, the supplements, but they can't explain it. So this technology that I've created allows you to do combination therapy, validate traditional systems of medicine, and discover new things. So it's that bridge that I wanted to do when I was a 4-year-old kid. So it's really exciting. So Cytosolve's that technology. We're making it accessible to the public shortly. So you could go there, Dave. You could load up your profile. Or if you're at Whole Foods and you're looking at these 2 supplements, which one to buy, we'll compute the biology. So it's it's not relying on reviews on Amazon, which you can pay some people in Pakistan or Nigeria to write you good reviews. This actually computes the biology. So that's Cytosolve. Yeah, but I've always had a deep interest in medicine. And it was in 2017, after the so-called email controversy we won, I realized that it was really important for me to participate in politics. I've always been political, but always running protests, bottoms up, because I believe you have to build these bottoms up movements. But I realized that it's also important to use the time of an election to educate people. So we educated people on the lack of integrity of politicians. In this case, Elizabeth Warren, right, who claims that she's a Native American, which she is not. We're the ones who forced her to take that DNA test, no pun intended. Right? And they had to sprinkle in Peruvian genes to even get her to a level. But it was not about racism. It was about the fact that she has no integrity. She's not a person of merit. The next year we ran in 2020 as Republicans. And again, we ran on some very, very important issues. In that election,
I think that was the year that we met. We actually met you in West Springfield. You were in the Staples parking lot.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah,
we campaigned everywhere. We had like 3,000 volunteers. We raised $2 million, all $5 donations. You couldn't leave Massachusetts without seeing a sign. We had big billboards. The Republicans don't really run to win. They run just to take people's money. They ran a guy called O'Connor, who they shoved in, had to give him $250K. But we had lawn signs everywhere. And the word on the street was Dr. Shiva is going to win by a landslide, even by the Republicans who didn't like us, the Republican hierarchy. Well, it comes election day. We win in Franklin County, where the ballots are all hand counted. And in every other county, we quote unquote lose 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, where the machines are used. And that's when I did not believe September 2020. Remember the day I said there's no freaking way we lost this election. But I didn't believe election fraud took place. I was very naive. I said, oh, that takes place in third world countries. So I was the one who put on my hat as an MIT guy. I was the one who discovered that the machines have the ability to flip votes. It's called a weighted race feature from an IT technology. You may like to know this, that the manual says that if Amanda got 1,000 votes, you got 1,000 votes, they can multiply Amanda's votes by 2 and your votes by 0.5. There's a feature on the machine that allows you to do that. Why is that feature there? That feature was created for condominium units, a condo trust. Let's say 110 people are living in a condo trust, and one guy owns 2,000 square feet of apartment space, and let's say the rest of us own 1,000 square feet. He gets 2 votes to our 1 vote on like maintenance issues, right? Because he's paying more into the condo trust. Makes sense there.
Yep.
But that feature was left in there, Dave. And I said, there's no way I lost. And we looked at the anomalies in the election. I had me and a friend of mine who's an actuary. You see all these anomalies. Now, how would I prove this, right? Because people could just call you a conspiracy theorist. So I went to the Secretary of State's office with a camera. It turns out there was a law passed in 50 years ago, 52 USC 20701, which says that all data in connection with a federal election has to be preserved for 22 months, right? Ballots and ballot images. What do I mean by ballot images? When you have one of those voting machines, if you go vote in West Springfield and you fill out your ballot, you put it in the machine scans your ballot, makes an image. It's called a ballot image. And then the AI on the machine calculates your vote. Yep. Okay. So ballot images are also supposed to be preserved by that law. So we went to the Secretary of State Galvin's office and we said, here's a freedom of information. We'd like the ballot images. The guy behind the counter, we have this on video, he goes, oh, we deleted those images. We don't have to save them. It's a law. It's a federal law.
Yeah.
So when I tweeted that out, Dave and Amanda, that, Massachusetts has deleted 1.7 million ballot images, I get thrown off Twitter, which is the most important platform for politics. And we had moved our campaign, if you remember, to a write-in campaign. Our volunteers were pissed. So I'm still a bona fide candidate, thrown off Twitter, and we go into federal. I had to sue the government to let me back on Twitter. And we had found out that a news article came out said that the state of Massachusetts had contacted Twitter supposedly to shut me down, which is the grossest violation of the First Amendment. The government silencing a federal candidate. Well, we went into court. No lawyer, because they're all corrupt in Massachusetts, because they all want to be friends with the government, wanted to take on the case. I had to do the case on behalf of not only me, but the people of Massachusetts. And I filed a federal case, me against 3 Harvard-trained lawyers, and I win. In courtroom examination, the social media director admits that the government of the United States, or all states, has a backdoor portal into social media companies to silence U.S. citizens. I discovered that. And we wrote to, I call him Tucker Carlson. He didn't do shit. Glenn Greenwald didn't do anything. They suppressed the story. But we went on, and we were the ones who exposed the fact that there's a backdoor censorship portal. Not only in the United States, everywhere in the world. And I was a victim of that. So that was a big victory for people because we're the ones who first exposed that. We also, at that time, ran the Fire Fauci campaign. You remember that? I used my medical training to expose that there was no reason to do lockdowns. Booby Kennedy, as I call him, was promoting lockdowns, right? So we, again, fought for the people of Massachusetts and for the country. And I wrote to Trump, don't shut down the country. If you want, give people vitamin D, if there is such a big thing. I was the one who came up with the protocol, which others stole from me. So we ran the Fire Fauci campaign. We're the ones who came out against lockdowns. We stopped the vaccine mandates in New Jersey.
Good.
We helped many school systems stop the mask mandates. Like we did all this very powerful work at the time. Science mixed with politics, right?
I tell you, what's interesting when you're saying about the mask mandate and the vaccines, because we work for ourselves, we never were forced to get the vaccine, and we never got the vaccine. And it seems like all the people that we know that have gotten it have gotten COVID many more times than us.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
I think
this is March of 2020, Dave and Amanda. In 2019, I'd gone back to my home state of New Jersey in Trenton, and I led one of the biggest protests, and we stopped the vaccine mandates there. We tabled the bill. Kennedy was promoting lockdowns. He didn't say anything against Fauci. He acts like he's anti-establishment. He's totally part of the big pharma shtick. He's the not so obvious establishment. But in March of 2020, I wrote a letter to Trump. I said, you're going to lose trillions of dollars shutting down the country. Don't do it. Just segregate people into the people who are old and really have problems. Fine. You can isolate them. The others, everyone can work. Vitamin D, vitamin A. I gave a whole protocol. Hundreds of millions of people's lives I've saved. I still get emails from people. Thank you, Dr. Shiva. I was in the ICU. Thank you for your protocol, vitamin C, etc. So that's when we realized the level of corruption, and we're the ones who exposed all of this. But we also realized, Dave and Amanda, that we were a bottoms-up movement in Massachusetts. They don't want that. You see, we didn't rely on the Republican Party. We were truly bottoms-up. We raised money bottoms-up. We were building a movement. They want you either to be in the Republican mafia or the Democrat mafia. And in Massachusetts, as you know, there's 5.7 million people are eligible to vote. But people don't trust the system. Only 4.2 million people even register to vote. And out of those 4.2 million people, in like the midterm election, like 2026 now, only 2 to 2.2 million will even come out to vote. And the establishment wants that. They don't want everyone coming to vote because they'll screw up their whole apple cart, you see?
Yeah.
So
their algorithm.
Of those 2.2 million people, 60% now in Massachusetts are independents. Nearly 95% of young people under the age of 25 are independents. So people, I think with the work
that brings me to another question that I has. Like you said, everyone's either an R or a D. You're running as independent. Do you think the country would do better off if there were no parties?
Definitely. Yeah, the other countries in the world have a parliamentary system. There's infinite number of parties. And based on the number, like if you're running for a federal election, if your party gets, let's say, 2% of votes, you get 2% of representation, right? So the Congress reflects the actual political leanings of people. Definitely. It should not be based on any of these parties because they're a racket, right? And they're not really that different.
If people stood up there and they weren't associated with the party, it would force the people to listen to their ideas. This is what I'm going to do for you. And instead of someone just going, "Oh, I didn't listen to the debate. I'm just voting R or D."
I think you nailed it, David. You nailed it. Because I think they've done this because they want to create dialectics, yin and yang, pro and anti, left and right. It's a way to manipulate people into making them fat, dumb, and lazy, right? But if people ran, I think you're bringing up a great point. If there were no parties, you'd have to say, who is this person? What's their background? What have they done? What's their history? Right? Have they, if people look at my history, they'll see me always fighting for people. I've never, my position on Israel has been no different than it has been today versus when I was 17 years old. It's been Zionism is racist. It's different than being Jewish. Been very clear on that. I did some of the earliest.
I still believe there's going to be corruption, even if there were no parties. However, I think the corruption would be
less.
It would be a lot harder for them to corrupt it because they wouldn't have the media backing one party versus another. But they would still try to find out how to get their guy in there.
Yeah, I think the whole notion is, Dave, when you really look at the history of change, if you go to the root cause of this, change has never come top down from political parties or even politicians. It has come from bottoms up movements. This is a central thing they stopped teaching in history class. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s in this country, most Americans are not taught this anymore. They don't know that 4 American workers were hanged in the United States for fighting for the 8-hour workday.
Wow.
In 1886 in Haymarket. Okay? In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were very vibrant movements led by women, starting in Lowell, Massachusetts. So all of this stuff, history has been suppressed. And it was these bottoms-up movements that forced FDR. The Democrats got scared shitless that they were forced to give the 8-hour workday. They were forced to give monies for building public infrastructure, right? Long before the measles vaccine came, it was public hygiene that actually solved measles. Okay, it's just a known fact. So, but those were from very powerful bottoms-up labor movements. They weren't controlled by top-down unions, by Democrats or Republicans running them. It was bottoms-up movements. So by the 1950s, the elites were so pissed off that people independently organized to win their rights. They had to shut those down. So in the 1950s, they branded all those movements as communists being run out of Russia, the Red Scare. I don't know if you remember, this was called the McCarthy era, right? This guy called Eugene McCarthy out of Wisconsin branded all these people. Americans were, executed, right? In the United States. So they scared the shit out of people using the Red Scare, never to build bottoms-up movements.
Yep.
And I don't think very few people teach people. We have a whole movement that educates people on this. And then between 1950 and 1970, the Democrats took over unions and the Republicans really started running Wall Street. They created this 2-party system to ensure that no bottoms-up movements came. So if you can understand the central thesis, the goal was to ensure that people independently would not organize to get what their rights were. During 1900 to 1970, when we as the American people fought on the streets for our rights, bottoms up, as the economy grew, everyone's wages grew. And the Rand Corporation just came up with this amazing report that shows this. As wages grew, as the GDP grew, whether you were the lowest income wage or the highest, everyone got a piece of the American pie. Everyone grew. And why? Because there was a strong labor movement. 11,000 strikes in the United States. 250 million people taking to the streets. After 1970, with the likes of the Kennedys and the Bernies, the liberals taking over the unions, and then the Democrats, basically screwing people a la Wall Street, these 2 parties worked together to convince people, you don't have to fight. We'll take care of it for you. Right? On the left and the right. AOCs or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren's. I mean, if you look at Massachusetts is the most corrupt state in the country. Yeah. We had a D- on infrastructure a few years ago. D-. Massachusetts is a center of the global swarm. Harvard University and MIT. All the scumbags of the world go get educated there, and then they go to these other countries and they oppress their people. Right?
So they brainwash them at those colleges, and then they spread out from the rest of the country. So
all over the world.
And that's why they're trying to take away American history.
Exactly. But it was these bottoms-up movements. So if you look between 1970 to today, we've only had 900 strikes, 2 million people. That's this past 60 years compared to the previous 60 years, 11,000 strikes and 250 million people. You see, there's been no bottoms-up movements. And during this period, the GDP has grown more explosively than there, but only the top 2 quartiles have increased their wages. The first 2 quartiles of wages have gone down. And if you add up all those wages that have gone down, it comes down to $47 trillion of wealth transfer. And the so-called Democrats have been part of this stealing. So the liberal Democrats are the worst because they talk a big game, that they're doing something, but they're actually been part of the collusion with the Republicans. They work hand in glove. So that's why, we're running as independents. And just to sort of let you know what the core issues that I wanted to let you know. In Massachusetts, we think my running for senator, we're pretty well known. We have high visibility. And this is disconcerting to the establishment because typically if I were a new guy, I'd have to spend $50 million establishing my brand. But, 70% of Massachusetts residents know Dr. Shiva. They know the fake Indian, real Indian campaign. They know what we did for Fire Fauci. They know we fought for them. So we're known, and this is very dangerous to them because they try to suppress you. Remember when in 2020, Elizabeth Warren kept us off the debate stage, 2018, which was illegal, even though we got on the ballot. But this year, we have a huge chance of actually winning because of the move to independence, and particularly the following facts. Number one, our movement, which is what Shiva for Senate campaign is, it's a movement, is telling people, look, I'm running for Senate. I'm probably the best candidate, definitively the best candidate. But the reality is anyone who actually comes bottoms up, who's not part of these two parties, can never win in the current model because you have to raise 20, 50 million bucks. There's only one way to win, Dave, and this is really the central message. If you guys were to clip this, and I want to get this out there, to have a real candidate like me, to have a real fighter like me, who's proven it his whole life, to win, it's going to come down to you guys. So to the extent I'm running, it can't be I go around like I did in 2020 killing myself. We need everyone who listens to this video in Massachusetts or wherever you are to go get 10 other people to pledge to vote for me. It's got to be bottoms up. Each one of you has to be wanting to be U.S. Senator through. I'm just a product, right? But it's our movement. And so what we did was online at Shiva for Senate. If you go to it, there's a thing called Pledge for Dr. Shiva. And when you pledge, you get a link that you can share with other friends, and you can actually see, are your friends helping? So our goal is to make everyone an activist, everyone a local leader. That's the only way to win. So to the extent, I'm not going to run around like I did in 2018, 2020, because it's not about me. It's about, do you want to seize your future? That's our slogan. Seize your future. And you'll like this from an IT standpoint, is we need a systems upgrade. Like the entire country is running on an old OS, an old operating system. It's like, imagine my iPhone is running on DOS. It's going to be freaking slow. It's going to have a shitload of bugs. And that's what we have. We have a lot of bugs and corruption. And what I'm saying is we need a systems upgrade. I'm a systems guy. I'm an engineering systems guy. So I want to give a systems upgrade. And that systems upgrade will give us very specific wins. Number one, in Massachusetts, parents and homeowners, there's this generational squeeze. Young people can't afford a home, right? The rents are high. And it's not, let's say you own a home and you're renting. It's not you. It's BlackRock and these big investment firms are coming into Massachusetts, many other states. They're watching when a home sale goes and they say, oh, we'll buy your home for cash. You may have gotten these letters, right? People get these letters. So they're buying homes, then they fix them up and then they rent them at an exorbitant price. So the home is becoming an apartment. And this is being supported by people like Elizabeth Warren, Markey, Democrats and Republicans. So young people can't afford a home. That's why they're living with their parents. And the only way to do this, it has to be, you have to ban corporate residential hoarding, period. The other thing is, why do we have property tax? It's a big question. Why are we paying any property tax? You already pay state tax. You already pay federal tax. And you pay your property tax and your roads are still shitty. So where's this money going? And I'll tell you where it's going. A friend of mine said in Andover and many towns, he said, when I first moved here, there's one town manager. And he did all the work. Then he hired an assistant town. Then that assistant got to hire another assistant, and that assistant got to hire another assistant. So these are political appointees who are just making money. So the level of corruption is really, and you don't own your own home. You don't really own your home, right? And the facilities that are built in your town, we just had a $300 million school built in Belmont. I can't use it. I can't use their facilities, right? You can't use any of, like, who the fuck is these schools being built for? Is it the community,
Well, and you
or just
see
these?
more and more often they're doing this Proposition 2.5 override. They keep raising taxes and raising taxes, and like you said, the roads are still terrible. You can't drive down the road without hitting a pothole.
Yeah.
So
So
where's all
I
that
think the
money
key.
going?
Yeah, the key is it's the corruption. In terms of this is why, to your point, the two-party, that whole system must be trashed because it promotes this big fat. So that's one big issue, the generational squeeze. The second issue that I want to address is breaking the energy cartel. Because what's happened is we have to decentralize the grid with local micropower. What's happened is, from an engineering standpoint, is that all these idiots are getting electric cars. Okay? If you believe in them, great. But the reality is it's centralizing the power grid. We don't have enough power. So people think, oh, I got an electric car. Well,
Great.
someone's burning something there to give you your electric car. So where I live, this idiot down the road gets, has all these bumper stickers acting like he's fighting for anything. He's got 2 electric cars. He's got a 400 amp circuit. I'm still only using a 100 amp circuit in my home. So he's upgraded his circuit, and everyone's upgrading their circuits. But it's putting a massive thing on the central power grid, which has never been upgraded, right? You have to upgrade the core infrastructure if you're going to do this. So the other piece of this is all based on the climate change bullshit, right? As though CO2 is related, CO2 is causing the increase in temperature, which myself and other scientists have shown is a complete scam. The only people who are going to make money off that are the carbon tax credit guys, right? Because and we could have a whole discussion on this, but the bottom line is the average person can't afford energy, electricity. It's being driven to very, very high prices because of how the whole setup is being done. And we need to really abolish these state monopolies. That's number 2. The next thing is for patients and practitioners. The relationship between a doctor and a patient used to be like this, right?
Yes.
I used to see this doctor for 32 years. He knew me, my parents, everyone. Now the insurance companies have come in the middle. You can't really have a personal relationship with a doctor. You have to go through all this other nonsense. And you don't really
we just
get.
went through that with my grandmother.
Right. The average 82-year-old, by the way, is on 12 different drugs. Right?
Yeah.
The whole intent is to drive people into the system and then to churn you through there, to triage you, to get lots of diagnostics, lots of tests that you don't really need. And they never ever solve a fucking problem. They get you involved in more health issues. So, our slogan is your body, your life. Practitioners and patients, doctors are leaving the field. Nurses are leaving medicine in droves. This is because the whole system is based on middlemen who control the flow of capital to not deliver health at all. So, I
That's
have
why
a
the
solution
healthcare in
for
this state is terrible.
Horrible. And then you go to the 4th constituency, which is the real patriots who really want to make sure America doesn't fall apart. And that can only be solved if we have election transparency. We've just filed on behalf of all the people in Massachusetts a lawsuit just 2 days ago saying that you can't delete fucking ballot images, Galvin. Where are the ballot images? Follow the laws. No one else is doing that. I did that. Okay, on behalf of the people. I'm the one who fought for this. So that's for patriots who want to make sure we really have democracy. Ideally, you'd move to paper ballots, right? But if you don't want to do that, you better save the ballot images. So, and the last piece, there's a couple of pillars. The last pillar is that majority of Massachusetts people are independents. And we have to dismantle this uniparty. You made the point. It's parasitic, and that parasitic class of the uniparty is very fine with sending money to go bomb Iran, but they don't want to build roads right here, right? So we need to directly invest in Massachusetts infrastructure. We have to repair roads and bridges, and we have to defund foreign aid. So both parties are both not America first. They're both Israel first. And you can see it. You drive down any road, you're lucky if you don't hit a freaking pothole or you have to drive slow. The Massachusetts got a D minus in infrastructure. And MIT is here, the #1 school in engineering. None of it makes sense. The only way out of this is we have to mobilize these groups. The people really want body autonomy, want really great healthcare. The patriots, homeowners, working people, and the true independents. And that's who our movement is targeting. And we have a solution for each of those 5 groups. But the only way we can win, Dave and Amanda, is you guys doing a simple act. You guys pledge, just go tell 10 other people. That's 20.
Okay.
And we want to give people the experience of building a bottoms-up movement, right? If 100,000 people pledge and each one of those people get 10 people, we win this election. There's no other way to win unless we, the people, go talk to people saying, we got this great candidate. He's a great fighter, been here for 45 years, 46 years. He's delivered solutions. Why can't we have a guy like that? Elizabeth Warren, what the fuck has she done? She supported Dodd-Frank, which destroyed 2,000 small banks. What has Markey done? He doesn't even live here, right? So these people are just...
A couple more things I want to bring up, like the point where you were bringing up the, the ballots and stuff like that. What do you think about the voter ID? And do you think that should be something that we'll look into?
Yeah, so the way I remember from a systems approach, Dave, email was a system. When I look at the whole election process, I look at it as a system. The election fraud occurs in multiple phases. The first place election fraud occurs is who even gets visibility on the news stations. A guy like me, it's too dangerous for them, right? So the election fraud begins, let's say you and me and Markey are running. We don't get to be on the major news stations. He gets it. That's fraud right there, right?
Yep.
So you have to give equal airtime. They don't do that. The next level of fraud, so, okay, let's say you make it over that, you got visibility, which is what we did. We mobilized people, we handed out flyers, so we screwed that over for them. We didn't even need their media. If you make it through their visibility, then you got to get on the ballot, which means you got to collect 20,000 signatures. Well, we actually went and collected signatures. I never saw Elizabeth Warren ever collecting signatures. How did she get on the ballot? I believe they have a boiler room somewhere, and they just have people signing. I can't prove it, but someone should investigate this. So then we also got on the ballot. After we overcame their visibility, after we got on the ballot, fraud occurs both places. Then they're supposed to put us on the debate stage. We're thrown off the debate stage. Why? That's fraud right there. So we made it over all those 3 things, right? Yep. And then the last piece they have is manipulating the election, flipping the votes, right? And the voter ID piece. You see, when I went to vote in Belmont, first time I went to vote years ago, right? They go, oh, we don't need your ID. I go, what do you mean? They go, where do you live? I said, Snake Hill Road. They just look at, I could have said any address. Right. So definitely you need voter ID. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you need to make sure that why aren't all the ballot images just posted online? We can do like Amazon, like super fast and order shit that comes through drones, but we can't we should be able to count the votes in real time. It should be all transparent. I mean, if they don't want to build it, I'll build it for them. It's not going to take that much to do it. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, you take the images, scan them, put them on, and let people count them. Anyone can count the votes. So this whole thing is opaque. But the point is, yes, you should have voter ID. But it's not just a voter ID. It's the entire process from the 2-party system, who gets visibility. It's a complete corrupt system, end to end. So you can't just whack-a-mole voter ID. They got another way to screw you over, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
and if they're using this electronic technology, we shouldn't have to wait weeks to get the results.
It should be. You should see the actual votes coming in real time.
Yeah,
you can do that nowadays. Real time, actual votes being counted. MIT can't help do this. We're right here. Well, it's not that difficult. The AI could write the code to do technology. That. Right. So all of this is being done to ensure that we, the people, have to suffer an absolutely corrupt system. That meritocracy doesn't come up. People like Elizabeth Warren, who have no meritocracy, people like Markey, are shoved down our throats. And what do the working people in Massachusetts get? Massive taxes, horrible health care, property tax again, as I talked about. Working people can't afford the energy here. There's been a massive exodus out of Massachusetts. So who's coming into Massachusetts? Who can afford it here? Elites from other countries.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening. It's becoming a club for the few, right? So that's what's got to be stopped. And we need a systems upgrade. We need to seize our future. But the only way to do this is you need a fighter like me in there who'll be exposing this shit every fucking day. All of these guys. And by the way, United States senators, so much power. The other senators don't even exercise their power because they're all in collusion among each other. My goal is, I'm not going to do, you guys know I have about a couple million followers. I'm out there exposed. I'll do the same thing. I'm not going to change. And I'm not even going to promise that the United States Senate can change. But think about what I've done being outside of the Senate. Think about what damage that I'll do to these guys once I'm in there. Mm-hmm. And that damage will be to awaken people that it's up to us. We have to seize our future. There's no Messiah coming at all. And that message is a very powerful message. So that's why, we've created a way for people to do this. People should go to Shiva for Senate, get people to pledge, and go get 10 more people to pledge. If we get 100,000 people to get 10 more people to pledge, that's a movement. It's not like, oh, please give me money, and I sell my ass to APAC and all these people to do that, right? This movement is about encouraging individuals. You got a great product in Dr. Shiva Me. Now, what the fuck are you going to do about it? I'm not going to do all your work. That's what I've learned. I have to demand that people step up to the plate and at least do a little bit of citizenship. 2 hours, if each person puts in 2 hours, they can get 10 pledges. That's all we're saying. And it's exercising your citizenship. Just 2 hours.
That's the thing. Everyone says they want change, but not everybody wants to put the effort in to make the change. So people, if they want to see the change, they gotta. And that's half the country's issue. He says we got all these people that are putting in a whole bunch of time to make the corruption, but no one puts into the fight back. So
that's why, Dave, we got a huge opportunity because when we ran against Warren, no one knew about me. Real Indian, fake Indian. It was a hilarious campaign. Everyone came to know about us. And then after all the work we did with Fire Fauci, exposing the backdoor portal, everyone knows I'll fight for them. And now it's basically up to people. I think we can find 100,000 people in Massachusetts who will go get 10 more people to pledge.
Yeah.
So it's not one, it's 2% of the eligible voting population. Just 2% can change this. And if we can pull this off, it's going to be like an explosion went off. It's like, fuck, how did they do that? They did it bottoms up. They didn't raise 50 million. They didn't raise 20 million. The capital was human capital. David went and talked to 10 people. Amanda went and talked to 10 people, got them to pledge. And those 10 people went and talked to 10 people, right? Yeah. There's no other way for us to win as working people if we don't seize the future. That's why our slogan is seize the future. There's no one coming, and we need a systems upgrade.
We do. Well, I appreciate that. And you've got a couple websites, for people to go to and get their pledge in there. And
Shiva4Senate.com. It's your website because when you sign up, you get a link and you actually get a portal. You can actually track. We've gamified it. So you can actually track. If you tell a friend, if you give me your link to do it, you can call them up and say, hey, Bob, how come you haven't pledged? Like we have to get people not to be fat, dumb, and lazy. And we have to challenge them. Hey, you spent like 4 hours watching a fucking football game. Can't you just take 2 hours?
Yeah.
And just go get 10 people to pledge for a phenomenal candidate. If you're not willing to do that, stop fucking complaining. Accept what you get. Your leaders reflect your state of consciousness. So if you're not willing to do that, other countries, you can't do this. Yeah. The United States of America, we have these rights. People have to exercise their rights.
Exactly.
So that's what this is about. People have to seize the future. If they don't do that,
can I hear that all these are on your private server now? You got your own private server?
Everything. Yeah, we have our own data center. Just to let people know, you're looking at a technology that's not only created email, but I run my own infrastructure. Okay? We're not relying on Amazon. We're not relying on Google to run our stuff. And every Thursdays, we hold a online meeting, right? Two orientations. And every Saturdays at 2 p.m., we host meetings at 701 Concord Avenue in Cambridge. We bring people some refreshments and we talk. There's no fucking excuse for people to get off their butts and do something. Otherwise, you're going to get fucking Markey and Elizabeth Warrens or Seth Moultons who are complete opportunist scumbags. And yet, and this is a moment people have been waiting for. Our winning in Massachusetts will send a shockwave of how things get done. Neighbor to neighbor, bottoms up. Neighbor to neighbor, bottoms up. So it's really up to people now. It's not up to me. And I want to let people also know that, I'm gonna help Dr. Shiva. No, you're not helping me. You're helping yourself. I just happen to be a product at the right point in history. But people have to realize that they're helping themselves by getting 10 other people, you know? So I
appreciate it.
We're flipping the whole switch here, Dave. It's like people say, great candidate, got all the credentials, 4 degrees from MIT, invented email, has delivered thousands of jobs, has fought for us. Like, what the fuck more do you want? You got the best fucking candidate here. But the best candidate can't win in a corrupt environment. The only way out of that is a bottoms-up movement. Go look at the history of the United States. They don't want you to look at that. And we are attempting to give people an opportunity to engineer a bottoms-up movement. Pledge. Go get 10 people to pledge. Bottoms up. Talk to your barber, talk to your banker, talk to your neighbor, talk to your landscaper, right? Dave, you deal with a bunch of people. Let them know. This is a guy, you know? That's what we need. It has to be bottoms up. It has to be bottoms up. There's no other way for good people like us to win because they control everything else. And by the way, one of the things we're doing is when you go to vote, take a picture of your ballot and throw it up on our app. Load it up. We're going to count the fucking votes.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's a perfect idea.
Yep.
All right.
So we have solutions. Social media has become a platform for whining and complaining. Our movement, our campaign offers people actual solutions. Go pledge. Go get neighbors to pledge. You know, go upload your ballot images. We actually have real solutions. So it's probably going to be hard for people to get, realize, oh shit, we can actually solve problems because they've been told for so long we can't.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being on with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about some of the technical issues that occurred.
No problem.
But
we know how computers work.
Yep.
But thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. You've been very quiet.
Nice to meet you.
It was nice meeting you. Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much
Bye
for
now.
everything you do. Thank you. Be well.